Welcome back. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to work on figuring out the role of ethnicity and nationality in Central Asia in the Soviet context. So we'll explore the role of nation building as part of Soviet strategy of controlling really Central Asia. So looking at the objectives here, on what basis did the communists carve up Central Asia? We'll talk about everything from Turkestan to demarcation along the titular lines that we have today. And then we'll have a little bit of an overview of the Soviet Union, and actually that'll be expanded today because I'm including days 5 and 6 in here. Okay, but it is still it is just a quick overview in the grand scheme of things. So let's start here. Once communists move into Central Asia, from the very beginning, they need to figure out how to deal with this as a territorial entity, and they had various options they were facing. One was they could incorporate Central Asia into Russia, but that was no good because that was just, it sounded far too imperialist for Bolshevik tastes. They were, after all, liberators, or so they said. Another option was to leave the territorial integrity as it was, leave these khanates, these kingdoms in place. The problem here was this might lend legitimacy to the old system and undermine the new one, something that they obviously didn't want to do. Another thing that they considered doing was placing institutions on the map based roughly on ethnic and geographical patterns. But at the time, remember this is 1917, 1918, this was just seen as too difficult to actually do. And the final option was to create a greater Turkestan. And this is ultimately what they decided to do at the beginning. Just create this thing called Turkestan as an autonomous Soviet republic. So that's what they did do. So as I alluded to this in the last class, they initially chose the last option, Turkestan Autonomous Soviet Republic, which was created in 1918. And this did a couple things. First, it made good on old promises of autonomy, and they did this in the hope of winning friends against the Tsar and allies, of course, in the Civil War. Remember, at this point, there's a civil war going on between the Tsarists and people sympathetic to the Tsarists, known as the Whites, and the Reds, those who are in support of the Bolshevik Revolution. So they could make good on these promises of autonomy, but at the same time, Moscow emphasized limited autonomy. So the Soviet Constitution of July 1918 made Turkestan one of 8 autonomous republics. In addition, in 1920, you had, and this is a picture from that period, and I know it's an awful map, but you had the creation of the Khwarezm People's Soviet Republic here, in what used to be the Khivan Khanate when they took it over, as I mentioned in the last class. And then the Bukharan People's excuse me, Soviet Republic, which was created from the Bukharan Khanate as it fell, also in 1920. They also divided power between the party and the government through these commissariats that were later turned into ministries, and the Soviets through these councils or legislative bodies. So at this point, the party had an implicit but not an explicit role in running the state. So we're still talking about 1918 here. This map obviously goes up a little bit further. In other words, the party was the head of these various state organizations, but these organizations weren't run solely by the party quite yet. So as you can see here, this Turkestan thing didn't last long. Moscow soon moved towards ethnic identity as a principle for division. And by 1920, the Kazakhs had their own autonomous republic. Note here, it was known as the Kyrgyz Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic at first. And they changed that name only a little bit later in the late, I believe, 1920s, early 1930s. And then in the 1920s and 1930s, you get other parts of what we know as Central Asia today that begin to take shape, largely along ethnic lines. So we're going to start here by talking about what ethnicity is, and then we'll move into what a nation is, because that's how the Soviet Union began to sort of coalesce at this period. So we define an ethnicity along 6 dimensions. You have to have these 6 ingredients to be an ethnic group. One is to have a collective proper name. We are the Kyrgyz, the Tajiks, the Uzbeks. Another is a myth of common ancestry. We come from this place, these people, this time when this happened. A third one is shared historical memories, sort of overlap here. But what were the things that define our people? Oftentimes these are nasty things like genocides, survival, but sometimes they can be good things, like how we were born, how we came out of this bad land into this good place, or something like that. The fourth ingredient here is one or more differentiating elements of common culture. These can be heroes, they can be customs. We eat like this. We drink these sorts of things. We celebrate these kinds of birthdays or name days or whatever it is. They can be rites of passage. So, for example, having a circumcision in Islam, weddings, burials, that sort of things, values, and especially language. And we'll see that language becomes a very important aspect of identification in the Soviet Union fairly soon. The fifth ingredient here is an association with a specific homeland. We are the Kyrgyz. We were always in this area. We are the Uzbeks. We were always in this area. It doesn't mean you inhabit that area right now. It doesn't mean no one else inhabits that, but you identify with that homeland. So the classic case of a conflicted homeland would be Israel/Palestine today. Two groups claim this homeland. And finally, the sixth ingredient is a sense of solidarity for significant sectors of the population. We are this ethnic group because we identify as this ethnic group. We all do. So now we move into nation. And as we move from ethnicity to nation, all this means is we're talking about politicized ethnicity. So once you give these various political connotations or aspirations to an ethnic group, we're talking about a nation. It's a new term. Political and intellectual elites are usually tasked with creating a nation out of these ethnic groups. And some of the processes that this involves includes, for one, encouraging active political assertion by the community. The second thing could be push for the community to be in its homeland. That should be its and not is homeland. So this could be an externally recognized territory that they want for themselves. A third aspect here is economic unity. We all operate within an economic division, whether that involves using our own currency or, for example, having our own customs, as in taxes or tariffs on the border, or local taxes. All these things involve economic unity. A fourth aspect is to orient sort of everything around the masses, highlighting or educating people in the national values. So bringing on these histories, these myths, these memories, and conveying them to people, and having everyone sign on to them and recognize them for what they are. And the fifth here is to confer civil, social, and political rights upon members. In other words, making them citizens within this territory. So this is how we identify ethnicity and nation. And I'll take another set of slides before we move on.